Hello, everybody, and welcome into Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I'm Nick Vete. He's Ricardo Martinez-Paz. Steelers and Eagles, man, both looked really good this past week, so we had to hop on and get an episode in talking about the Steelers, talking about the Eagles. Both of these teams playing really well, making both fan bases feel really good right now and really optimistic, so we're going to dive into all of it. But before we do, Ricardo, how you doing, my friend?
Good, man. Glad to be back for another episode. I know it's been a while, but I mean, so much has gone on, just generally, and yeah, I mean, our teams are just on fire, dude. It's crazy how well they're. I'm a little surprised, But how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's a beautiful time. This is one of my favorite times of year because like ski season's kind of starting. I'm a big skier. You've got the peak of NFL regular season. You've got college football, conference championships coming up. Baseball hot stove is starting to really heat up. You got everything going on in the sports world. So it's a great time. And you love to see, our NFL teams both kind of, playing insanely well. And I think just to kind of get right into it, we could start with the Steelers at this point, the first game between the two this weekend. And, it's interesting coming off the loss to the Browns in what was a bad weather game, still, had a good fight. Really, Cleveland, it almost felt like they were playing like it was their Super Bowl rivalry matchup. Definitely felt a little bit down after some really good vibes building up before then. And then how do they respond this week? But, having one of their biggest offensive outputs really in the history of the franchise. So definitely nice to kind of see that response. And I think that's where I kind of start with one of my big takeaways is like, I know it was against an awful defense in the Bengals, possibly the worst defense in the NFL, but just to see that Russell Wilson still has this in him, just to see that the Steelers offense is capable of putting this together. And really, of that too, being able to capitalize and, convert on touchdowns, which was kind of their Achilles heel for a lot of this season, seeing them be able to convert at a high clip on their possessions was huge to be able to see like, oh, this offense can put up points and, match other high-octane offenses when needed. I feel like that was a major sign that we've kind of been waiting for in Steelers land.
Yeah, I mean, man, the last time they scored 44 points, I think it was 2000 or something like that, which I was talking to someone at work about that. I was like, that was when the year I was born and you were born the year after, but still, that's crazy. That's 24 years ago.
Yeah, man. I'm even pulling up a stat because I heard something crazy that I actually sent to one of my buddies after the game. And it was Alex Kozora tweeted it out, but it was just kind of blowing my mind at just basically like putting in perspective the sort of like production that the offense had this week. And the stat went, the Steelers have punted only once in back-to-back games. That's only the second time that's happened since World War II. So the fact that the offense was, converting at such a high clip this week to kind of have that happen and, obviously putting up touchdowns the week prior. And granted, there were some turnovers last week against the Bengals too. But, this week for it to be pretty much all offense sort of put that in perspective as well a little bit. So, yeah, man. And to me, this kind of bodes well because that was what everyone was talking about was the aspect that like the Steelers can move the football, but they can't score. They're not productive in the red zone. And I feel like we finally saw them get over that hump a bit more this week too. Part of it, running the ball more down in the end zone and just really kind of like just being able to sort of, punch through and break through that seal. And I think that it was something like it felt like they were capable of doing it. And especially with the aspect that, Russell Wilson had always been a good red zone quarterback and the aspect that Arthur Smith, when he was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee, was one of the most productive offensive coordinators in the red zone. It felt like it was only a matter of time before the other shoe kind of, dropped at the rate that they were moving the football.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I didn't think that game was going to be. I mean, I texted you about it. I was like, I did not think it was going to be a shootout like that. But the fact that, they kept up and were in the lead for most of it or for a good amount of it. and just put up as many points as they did is just, I mean, they're winning games in different ways, it seems like. So that's also a good sign, for the playoffs. And it's not just, the defense you're relying on. It's not just, special teams, the run game, like you're throwing it out, you're putting it in the air. Like it seems like the Steelers are just one of those teams that can beat you in multiple ways.
Yeah. And I feel like we haven't seen a Steelers team like this really since Ben Roethlisberger retired. And like, I feel like you may even be able to go a little bit further back, that like what we saw this past week honestly reminded me of like the 2018 like Killer Bees Steelers teams with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger airing it out. Like that's what it reminded me of, like Todd Haley offensive coordinator days in Pittsburgh. And it was just really refreshing, honestly, to see that too. And a lot of it, I don't want to talk too much about Russell Wilson because spoiler alert, he's going to be in stock up, stock down. But a lot of it kind of stems from like the ability that this guy can still play and still air the ball out. And I liked the how much Najee Harris was involved in the offense this week, even though he missed a portion of the game due to whatever he was dealing with. It seemed like he got like winded or something. Kind of odd, and I don't know if they ever really got to the bottom. I think he kind of gave a like joking answer as to what happened with like Pratt Fryermuth's wife cooking food on Thanksgiving. I didn't really get the whole gist of that, but just felt like all aspects of the offense were kind of firing on all cylinders, and it was great to see. And yeah, like you said, didn't really have to rely on the defense as much.
Yeah, and it's just like, this is the time of year where the Steelers seem to always figure it out and play their best football, which is always the best time. So
yeah, absolutely. And they're continuing to chug through this stretch of schedule that it was, seen as really the toughest portion of their schedule was going to be after the bye onward. They've continued to kind of churn out wins. And, I'll flip things over to the defense a little bit. I mean, that's kind of the one area from this game that I guess you could kind of step back and be like, whoa, like the defense is supposed to be, kind of the force that's, sort of the steady factor, able to come up with those big stops. I mean, I will say, for as bad as the Bengals record is and how much of a disappointment their season is, like Joe Burrow's still having, like statistically speaking, an MVP caliber season. He's had a great year. It's just the aspect that his defense has been atrocious. But this offense is one of the best in the NFL. So I don't want to rip the Steelers defense too much for, the amount of yards they gave up and obviously the amount of points that they gave up as well. I mean, is that fair that to go a little bit easier on the defense in that sense?
Yeah, I'd say so, especially because all season long it feels like they've been one of the best in the league. So, yeah, I mean, this is just, you're going up against a very good quarterback, one of the probably, I don't know, would you put him top 5, Joe Burrow?
Yeah, I think when you kind of look at things, like all things being equal, both like what he's done this season and over the course of his whole career, I mean, he's really the only guy that's been able to beat Mahomes in the playoffs in the AFC. Like, I think if you were to ask me, like, who do I want one season I have to win a Super Bowl? Like, he's one of the first quarterbacks I would pick. If you're asking, like, who would you rather start a franchise around, it may be, a different answer. But yeah, he's definitely up there for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's you're going up against one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So, and with a ton of weapons at disposal. I mean, like Chase Brown. I mean, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, all those guys. It's explosive offense. So I totally understand your point of kind of taking it easier.
And I will also say, to play devil's advocate a little bit, like they did do some things well. Like you mentioned Chase Brown. He kind of, popped off on the first drive of the game, scoring the Bengals' first touchdown. Mike Tomlin even made it a point of emphasis to kind of keep him honed in this game. And after that first drive, you didn't hear a peep out of Chase Brown the rest of the way. Yeah. And I also want to point out, just with the points scored, like the Bengals' first 7 points of the game came on that pick 6 interception, which doesn't really go against the defense. And given, how much the Steelers were up in the fourth quarter, you could tell the defense was also kind of playing back a little bit, trying to limit sort of the big play to a degree, even though it didn't really work out that way. Like it was taking a little bit more time off the clock. They knew they had a lead to play with. They didn't have to really kill themselves in terms of, over committing to allow quick touchdowns type thing. So
Right.
I don't want to kill the defense completely. And there were definitely other factors that kind of, went into the Bengals getting their points. I mean, that pick six alone, I texted you right after that I thought that was a bad call and it should have been,
It was.
maybe not defensive pass interference, but illegal use of the hands to the face. I mean, something against George Pickens that kept him from, Taylor Britt pulled him down to the ground on that play. I mean, that's got to be something.
I mean, his hand got under his helmet too, so that should have been something, but that tends to happen. Refs miss calls. It's just a common occurrence. So
yeah, and it is what it is. The Steelers were still able to get the victory, man. And I guess just talking about their recent state, so to speak, before we kind of move on to the Eagles here, like I said, coming off that loss to the Browns, it definitely felt like the point. I don't want to say it was like a low point of the season, but it was the type of thing where you were like, man, coming off back-to-back awesome wins against Washington and Baltimore. Like, you're feeling good. You're like, Thursday, short week. Let's get this win against the rivals and go into a long week. Like, it was tough to see that loss, but I'm happy that loss almost like lit a flame a little bit under the Steelers to go out and get this win against the Bengals.
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. It's just, I don't know. We texted about this, and you said, the Browns typically play the Steelers well, and so that, and considering the conditions and all that, the snow, typical AFC North kind of game. You kind of, I guess, when you look back at it now, it's not that surprising that it played out that way, but still, I mean, you beat quality opponents, you've beaten really good teams, and
and it was the type of thing like you said, weather conditions were poor. Browns rivalry game, Browns always, it feels like, in the last 5 years have played the Steelers close. And then, you throw in on top of that the fact that the Steelers missed a lot of opportunities early on in that game. And then the weather picked up. Like, it was just kind of a recipe. I'm almost more happy with just the way the team responded this following week with the extra rest to be able to come out and have, the proper offensive game plan in place to be able to contend with, that high octane offense of the Bengals and Joe Burrow. So definitely positive. And I'll definitely be talking a little bit more about this in Stock Up, Stock Down when we highlight some players. But let's move over to the Eagles, who I texted you right after the Steelers won. I was like, wow, that was an incredibly entertaining game. Let's lock in on the Eagles right now and see if they can help the Steelers out and beat the Ravens and give them a nice little 2-game cushion in the division lead. And that's exactly what the Eagles went out and did.
Yeah, this was one of the games before the season where I thought, this is one that the Eagles might lose. And even going into the game, I was like, they might. I don't know. It's just a really good offense. They're in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson doesn't lose to teams in the NFC. He's lost one time, which was the Giants, weirdly enough. So I was just like, I wouldn't have been, I guess, upset if they had lost, but man, the Eagles proved me so wrong. The first thing I'll say about them, I mean, it's just the defense has been playing just so well the last 6. I mean, you could say since the bye week, basically. And I mean, this Ravens offense was second in the NFL going into this game in terms of points per game and all sorts of other offensive metrics and all that. So, I mean, to have limited them to 19 points, the garbage time touchdown, whatever, we'll include it there. But if that hadn't happened, it would have been 12 points. Like, to go into Baltimore, to shut down Derrick Henry and limit Lamar Jackson. I mean, he'd had his plays of his, usual scrambling and all that, but even then, and a little help from Justin Tucker too. I'll say that too, but it's hard to believe it now, just because of where they were last season, how awful they were. It's just complete opposite. They've totally flipped it with Vic Fangio. So this defensive unit deserves so much credit. I mean, it's the saying goes, defenses win championships, and this defense, I think, is, good enough to win it all for them.
Yeah, man. I mean, this defense, you said it, from where they were last year to this year is incredible. And, one of the things that, I saw too was I was actually watching Get Up on Monday, and I don't remember if it was Dan Orlovsky or someone else, but they were kind of breaking down film from the Eagles game against the Ravens, and they were showing a play where I think it was like a screen pass or it was a short pass out of the backfield, and just the way that as soon as the ball left Jackson's hands, it was like 6 defenders all on the ball immediately. I mean, you had Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, one of the corners coming over, all converging on it. You had Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter running back at him. Like, everybody was just on the ball. And I think that just shows you, A, how hard this team is playing for Vic Fangio. Something that you didn't see last year is these guys playing so incredibly hard. And just the good technique and good awareness of just like everybody's on the ball. Like, there's no free yards that are given up right now, man. And I mean, how much of this do you kind of attribute to Vic Fangio versus like, the players themselves and the, roster just getting better? I mean, how do you kind of strike that balance?
I mean, it's a mixture of both, definitely. I think it's actually like the perfect combination because obviously the 2 rookies, Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, those 2 guys, alone have been huge in transforming this defense. And then bringing in Zach Bond, who, last year or with the Saints really didn't play on defense. He was more of a special teamer. To somehow find that and unlock him under Fangio, it's all just it's a combination of everything, really. And then Jalen Carter, obviously, taking another step. And even if he gets double teamed, he's still wreaking havoc there. And it's just, man, the attention to detail, just everything is just on point with this team, like this defense right now. So it's definitely a mixture of the two, for sure.
Yeah, man, everything's clicking. I mean, I know I texted you the aspect of like, look at the Dolphins defense this year and the step back they've kind of taken. Like, Vic Fangio's been in this league for a long time. Like, he's a real deal, legit coach, and I think it's showing in just how successful this defense is. Honestly, right now, probably the best defense in the NFL as of this week.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, but I won't go out and say that yet. I won't sound biased, but
all right, sounds good. Sounds good.
But I guess flipping it over to the other side, Saquon, man, what like. There's so many ways to describe him, and yet it's just like you still run out of ways to really, I don't know, express it. And it's just you see it on the field, and it's like he gets bottled up for 3 quarters, and then in the 4th he breaks one to the end zone, and it's just like he does this week in and week out. And I know Jalen Hurts didn't exactly do much or have his best game, but when you have a guy like Saquon in your backfield and that offensive line that just is one of the best in the league, coached by Jeff Stoutland, who's one of the best, actually the best offensive line coach in the NFL. It's just a recipe for success, and it's just so fun to watch him make plays. Almost, it just seems like every single time he touches the ball, I'm just like glued to the team. Like, I can't take my eyes away. But Saquon, man, is really transformed this offense, and he's just steps in every single week and just keeps rushing for like 100 yards. In the last 6 games, he's averaging 140 per game, which is absurd. And I think it's safe to say that he deserved the running back crown this week over Derrick Henry. So
yeah, definitely, dude. It's like you almost run out of things to say about him because he has been so transformational for this team. And this is something you've been harping on since we started the podcast, is like this Eagles team is at its best. Jalen Hurts is at its best when they're running the football first and foremost. And now that they have this guy who talent-wise is, a top 3 running back in the league behind still one of the best offensive lines in football, like, it takes so much pressure off of everybody in the sense of the play calling becomes easier. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to worry about being Superman every game. Like, you can have like a little bit of an off week and still not really even have to break a sweat. So to have him, it just like, it adds such a different level. So it's so much more dynamic than what they've had in the past. Even last year with DeAndre Swift and 2 years ago with Miles Sanders, like,
yeah,
I don't know. Can you even put it in perspective how different this kind of feels?
I will putting it in perspective, excuse me. He's on the cusp of breaking the Eagles' single season franchise record with 5 games left. He could do it next game, which is insane.
That's crazy.
And then Eric Dickerson, he's on pace to break that NFL all-time record, which listen, whatever happens with that happens, but I mean, yeah, it's he's breaking records, man. Like this dude is on the record-setting pace. Like it's that's really the perspective, I guess, the way to, I guess, describe it, because it's just a really special season for Saquon.
Yeah. And I mean, to just think that, he came from the rival Giants, like that alone to me is like a fireable offense for Joe Shane. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not even one to harp on like you need to draft a running back in the first round, but like just the fact that the owner wanted him back, John Mara wanted him back, and Joe Shane said, no, trust me, we're good. And then he went and signed with a rival and could potentially set the all-time single season rushing record. I mean, like, I don't know how you come back from that, even if you can get solid running back play elsewhere. And I mean, for the Eagles to kind of have that, I mean, that's something that they're going to hang over the Giants for a long time, definitely until, at least until the Giants are relevant again.
Yeah, which who knows when that'll be?
Who knows when that'll be?
That's neither here nor there. That's not for me to worry about right now. It's focusing on the Eagles, and I mean, the last thing I'll say, I guess, is, yeah, I mean, I kind of already said it before, but yeah, this team is a Super Bowl contender. They have the makings of it, and when they were back at 2-2, I was like, all right, yeah, not feeling great about it. They won a few games. I'm like, all right, I'm starting to, believe a little bit, inch closer to maybe we can make a run in the playoffs. And now I'm like, after beating the Ravens in Baltimore, I'm all in on this team. I'm just like, it is Super Bowl or bust. And it's crazy to think about, because last season that collapse they had, and it's just a few players, a few different coaching changes here and there. It just has suddenly made this team into what it is now. And man, they're chasing after the Lions for the NFC, for the 1 seed in the NFC. I'm believing in them, man. I never thought I'd say that this season, which is, yeah, it's just wild to me.
Yeah, man, they're definitely they're capable of it, dude. And I mean, honestly, I was thinking this before we hopped on the show, and I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up again because it feels like maybe it was a little bit irrelevant, but like that bye came at the exact perfect time. It's rare that you say that for a bye that comes in week 5 that early, but for where they were, just 2-2 to start, it felt like they needed a week off, just reset, and then they haven't lost since. And just every week they've been continuing to get better and better. And we can comment a little bit more on kind of like big picture, what this team's capable of. But I definitely think, beating the Ravens on the road, like you said, I mean, how do you ignore them, in an NFC that really isn't that deep, to think that they can't make a run to the Super Bowl? So, yeah, man, it's certainly promising, and we'll have to see how things continue. And before we kind of talk and look forward, let's get into stock up, stock down. I'll start, go back, flip things over to the Steelers. I'll start with the negative first, stock down. This is definitely a point that needed to be brung up. And, first one goes to George Pickens, man. His play to a degree could have really, really cost the Steelers in this game. Numerous penalties. It's childish. It's an aspect Mike Tomlin called him out in his press conference. Like, you need to grow up. Like, this is an aspect where, like, it's going to seriously affect this team at some point if it continues. And it's not like it's one-off at this point. At this stage, it's a trend. The Steelers already, I believe, had to settle for a field. It was actually the field goal Boswell, I believe, got blocked when Pickens, I don't remember what exactly happened, if he had scored a touchdown or what happened, but it got called back because of a mistaken penalty, or the yardage got called back. Something happened there, and it led to the Chris Boswell field goal attempt that got blocked. Mm-hmm. There was the motion where he, the ref said that he, made the like the gun move towards the stands. He claims he was pointing for a first down. Like, you got to be a bit more aware than that. There was the play after when he gained yards on Cam Taylor-Britt and, made him well aware. And these are things that's just costing your team. And I give him the stock down for that. Even though he had a good game statistically, like, he's hurting the team more than he's helping him in a game like that.
Yeah, it's every week. It is really, what is it going to take to, like, for him to not do that anymore. Like, I get it, he's like a fiery guy, but like at some point you gotta like control that, right? Like he's been in the league, he's not a rookie. Like he's been
Yeah.
in the league a few years now. Like at this point he should know. Um it's yeah, man, it's tough to watch from a neutral perspective. It's just like why do you keep doing the same thing over and over? Don't you ever just learn from it? I don't know. It's yeah, when play sorry, and just also when uh who is it that pulled him aside? Like players are pulling you aside like after
Yeah.
the play or whatever. Like that's I don't know, man. It was on full display like this past weekend, but it's just a repeat effect. It just continues to do it, and I don't really understand why.
It's brutal too because he's just as talented, if not more talented, than any wide receiver in the league.
Yeah,
But as a grown man playing a sport professionally, the fact that you can't keep your emotions in check to this degree, it's one thing if it happens once. The fact that this happened 3 to 4 times in this game and it's
yeah,
every week is crazy. You brought it up. Broderick Jones, his teammate at Georgia, had to pull him aside multiple times to try to calm him down. It's
yeah,
seriously affecting it's seriously affecting this team and his play. And luckily it didn't ultimately cost the Steelers the outcome of the game. But we've seen it before in football where these penalties at the wrong time can certainly cost teams victories, and you would hate to see that happen. In a stage, while the Steelers make this playoff push or even in the playoffs, because this has been a week-to-week thing that's continued to happen.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it's brutal. And the other stock down that I kind of have to give here, and it's kind of tough. I'm conflicted on it, but I don't know how I feel about the Justin Fields packages that we continue to see every week. Like I know that it worked in the last play of the game to kind of seal things, and
yeah,
I get that they want it to be a part of the offense, but it just feels kind of odd to me. And I don't know how I feel about the offense, like if it's affecting them coming out of rhythm. I'm not completely sold on it one way or another, but I'm not overly crazy about it. And I think part of this stems from the 2 games prior where it was, or excuse me, last week against the Browns where it wasn't as
yeah,
prior. Like they had success with it against the Ravens, didn't work against the Browns. They definitely scaled it back a little bit this week and had success with it at the end of the game. I don't know how I feel about it at this point. I think I'm leaning towards a little bit down on it compared to being up with it, but it's just something to me where like you kind of know what's coming at this point. Like
yeah.
Fields really hasn't thrown it that much when he's been put into the game in these situations, so I'm kind of out on that as a part of the Steelers offense.
Yeah, it's making it a bit predictable. Like if you did like mixed in passes instead of just running, then yeah, all right, then maybe that will be more effective and it won't be as predictable. But the fact that more often than not they're running it with Fields is like they're just gonna load the box. Like they're just gonna they know what's coming, like you said. So, um, I yeah, I don't know. It's to use it, you can use it. It's just a matter of like, yeah, like I said, mixing it up and maybe once a game or twice. I don't know. You don't even have to do it like every game. Like there's no need to. He's on the bench for a reason. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, it's the aspect too. Like when it works, it's great. But like when that thing doesn't work and it's like a 3rd and short,
yeah,
like I am not a happy camper when, you could have come up with something potentially more creative to get that, short yardage
yeah,
with a, pass, over the middle, something like that. Keep Russell Wilson in the game. Don't disrupt the offense's rhythm. Like when it doesn't work, like I'm not I'm more upset when it doesn't work than I am happy when it does work, if that makes sense.
yes, yeah,
So
totally
that's
sense.
kind of where I'm at with it. So I leave it as a stock down for now. And then to get a little bit more positive, stock up, I'll kind of stay in the wide receiver room for now. Calvin Austin, man,
Yeah,
has really kind of emerged a little bit this year. And I want to give him some credit. Caught another touchdown this week. He has very steadily been a solid presence. Really kind of emerged into the wide receiver too. We haven't heard much from Mike Williams, maybe still getting acclimated into the offense outside of that big catch he had. Roman Wilson's been dealing with the injuries all year,
yeah,
and outside of, Van Jefferson, some of these other guys, Calvin Austin has really kind of become that number 2 guy in the wide receiver room. And it's been awesome to kind of see him emerge a little bit.
yeah. He's had a receiving touchdown on each of the last 2 weeks now. So yeah, he's found his role in this offense, which I mean, yeah, good for him. And yeah, it's just another weapon and another player that's developing, another receiver that's really developing well for the Steelers. They're Steelers, man. They just produce good receivers. I don't know, man. They
Yeah,
just
yeah.
too often.
Absolutely. And now you hear Deontay Johnson's being suspended by the Ravens for a
Yeah.
week. And it's the type of thing, man. I think it was another Alex Kozora tweet I read this morning or during the day today. But it's like, if the Steelers trade away a wide receiver, there's a reason because they know what
Yes.
they've got in their wide receiver room. So,
Yep.
yeah. And then my other stock up that I want to give some love to is on the offensive line, man. I want to give Mason McCormick a shout out, dude. Like rookie guard, 4th-round pick. In the aspect of, wasn't expected to really play at all, came in like 3rd string guard this season behind, obviously it was supposed to be Say Malu and James Daniels, and Spencer Anderson was the number 2. Mason McCormick really wasn't expected to see the field. Injuries happen. Spencer Anderson wasn't playing well. McCormick has stepped in there and just kind of been a rock for this offensive line there, man. His play really hasn't been bad, hasn't been penalized much at all. And, just want to give him some love for really stepping in there, man. And this offensive line has some really young talent on it that could be promising for years to come. So glad to see his play kind of be, steady and really, more than steady, solid for the Steelers team this year.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you guys are now also developing offensive linemen, where in recent years it feels like you couldn't even really sign one or get one, draft one, and
Yeah.
develop them. Like it's a great sign for you guys that
Yeah.
another like what round did you say, 4th round?
He was a 4th-round pick. Yeah. Wasn't really expected to play. And I mean, Zach Frazier, I'm a huge fan of. Broderick Jones is, had his ups and downs, but is still developing. Troy Fatanu looked great before he got hurt. I mean, there's a lot of young players on here. I think some credit can go to Isaac Seumalo there for kind of being that lead by example, type of leadership presence in the offensive line room. So, man, it's been good. Let's talk about the Eagles stock up, stock down.
All right, I'll also start with a negative. I feel like it's kind of hard to pick a negative with this team. They haven't lost in weeks, so. But there are a couple I'll say. So the first one, I don't know if I might have already called him out before, but Avonte Maddox, I think I did like the first episode of this season we did, but I'm gonna do it again because anytime he's in the game, I mean teams target him and it's just he is not good. I mean, the fact that he was even brought back in the first place, coming off an injury, and I mean I think he was cut in training camp and then brought him in for depth, I guess. He is just not good. It's I feel bad for him because the injuries have kind of derailed his career, but he really is a liability. It's just like I said, every time he's in the game, the quarterbacks and offenses will go after him. So he's just, I don't know, he's a step too slow, and I don't know. The injuries, like I said, have really kind of held him back and stunted his development, I'll say. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to add on that. I mean, it's clear that Cooper DeJean has kind of taken over that, slot cornerback position, pretty much fully in nickel and definitely in dime packages. So, it's the type of thing where it's like he's just getting outplayed, man. It stinks, kind of for Avonte Maddox, but that's sort of the way that it goes. And yeah, I definitely hear you on the stock down. It's tough to be picking on the guy, but I guess that's what happens when the team hasn't lost in however many weeks.
Yeah, but the one for this one, excuse me, it's not one specific person, one player. I'm gonna go just with the wide receiver 3 position, which going into the season was always a huge question mark. And with Devontae Smith out with his hamstring injury, I mean, I'll just name the guys: Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, Anaya Smith, those last two rookies, Paris Campbell, Britton Covey. You would expect maybe one of them to step up and be that kind of wide receiver 2 for filling in for Devontae, but man, they have done nothing. I couldn't tell you how many targets they've had, but I could probably count them on my hand, on my fingers, because they just have not been involved in the offense at all. They've provided close to nothing other than Covey punt returning, but I mean, Johnny Wilson, just a red zone guy, and even then he doesn't get targets. Anaya Smith, useless because we use him for jet sweeps and all these gadget plays, and they never work. And then Paris Campbell, I don't know. He's Paris Campbell. He's not good. Jahan Dotson also is not done anything to really prove his worth on this team either. He's had a few, maybe like one or two big catches the entire season. It's just not consistent enough. So that's the thing that worries me a bit when
Yeah.
if AJ Brown or Devontae Smith get hurt again. That who's that other guy that steps up? Seems like none of them.
I'll
Currently.
ask a little bit of a devil's advocate question here. I mean, how much of that can you also sort of pin on play calling and Jalen Hurts to, get the ball to these guys in a more concentrated effort versus just them being involved in the offense, purely running their own, obviously running their routes that they're, kind of designated and everything.
Well, I just think about this game specifically against the Ravens. I mean, they were trying to target AJ Brown, but he wasn't open. And anytime that then there's Goddard also that got involved, and then it's just like there's no guy outside of those two in the aerial attack that they just I like. You should have every play has their reads and has their options and stuff like that, and it's just like it seems like none of those guys I listed ever get open or do anything other than maybe run block. But I guess this past week is kind of it's kind of different because they relied so much on the run game to a degree. So still, even then, it's like you need a wide receiver too. You can't just rely on AJ Brown and Dallas got also left the game so with an injury. So at that point you were really thin. It's just like you need someone to step up. So that's why I kind of put all of them in to stock down. But
yeah, I think that's fair for sure. I definitely get what you're saying, and it is the type of thing where you just got to kind of hope that they're Smith can get back healthy and there's no other injuries the rest of the way.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. Now flipping it over to stock up, I'm gonna go with Zach Bond, who I said before is just been a beast, man. He's just flying all over the field. I mean, it's just the most fun I've had watching a linebacker in I don't know, a few years. I mean, TJ Edwards was pretty good, but nowhere near as athletic it felt like as Zach Bond is. So just watching him week in, week out, he always makes a handful of plays, tackles for a loss, a sack, or it's just making plays everywhere on the field, man. So he definitely deserves his flowers. I mean, you could throw in a Kobe Dean in there, but those two guys in the middle, I mean, it's just, especially with how going into the season there was such a huge question mark at linebacker. Now it's just like this is far beyond what I expected.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been kind of amazing, like you said, to see him transition from a guy who was primarily a special teamer to now be the focal point of this middle linebacker room is pretty nuts. And I mean, honestly, he's playing like one of the best inside linebackers in the entire NFL.
Yeah, leads the team in tackles. Like he's 118, so I don't know where that ranks in the NFL, but it's probably up there. Dude's just constantly making plays. I'll stick with the defense. Milton Williams deserves his flowers because Jalen Carter gets all the attention, and rightfully so. So anytime Milton Williams is one-on-one, which is a good majority amount of the time, I feel like he's just disrupting the play almost every other play. I mean, the dude's just bull rushing offensive linemen. He's just the run game. He's really good, and he's had 3 sacks in his last 5 games. So he's found his groove. I mean, I just love the way he's developing and how he's played this season. He's probably the biggest, the guy who's benefited the most from Jalen Carter getting all the attention on defense.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, both of those guys, like up front, is such a huge thing, especially the way that this defense is playing right now. The fact that they are able to get this interior pressure, I feel like is so huge. Jalen Carter is obviously having an amazing season, but Milton Williams has kind of been right there having a really good season as well. So I like that you kind of shouted him out. I feel like him and Mason McCormick were a little bit of those like more underrated stock up. So did you have anything else, or was that it for stock up, stock down?
I'll make this one short. Offensive line as a whole, that's cheating, but because I mean it's they've just like I said earlier. I mean Saquon's been running wild, so that's a big credit to them. And all the run blocking and all the schemes, all the plays they've run. So yeah, they deserve a lot of love. Love those guys, offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as long as Jeff Stoutland's going to be there, I mean, it's always going to kind of come together at one point or another. So, yeah, just moving on now to just looking ahead towards next week and kind of bigger picture for both of these teams. Steelers back at home this week. They're going to be hosting the Browns in a 1:00 game. This is the type of thing, I mean, after that loss on Thursday Night Football, I definitely see them kind of bouncing back and, finding a way to get a win here against the Browns in the rivalry game. I mean, again, I don't expect it to be a blowout. I think it'll be, again, kind of close like we saw 2 weeks ago, just because the Browns have played the Steelers tough. I'm really hoping the defense can kind of bounce back a little bit after the, game against the Bengals here. And the one other aspect, I want to say to kind of get to big picture now, man, is, I kind of spaced on giving Russell Wilson the other stock up or a stock up in the sense, but he definitely deserves to get some attention, man, because he has been playing phenomenal and has really kind of elevated the Steelers team to another level where, I honestly think that this is a team that, like, if the cards kind of fall the right way, I could see them making a run through the playoffs and potentially getting to, a conference championship game. And, if the stars kind of align, like, I think they have the talent to put together, a run to the Super Bowl potentially. I think they're on that level where that's where the conversation can kind of go at this point. I don't know what more they need to prove to kind of get to that stage.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, they're right now in the meat of their schedule, the gauntlet of the schedule, the hardest part. So, and they've answered it pretty well so far. Man, they have the defense. They've always had that, and now the fact that you have the offense that can put up as many points as they did this past weekend. I mean, and the special teams, we're not ruling them out too. Got to give them love too. They have all three fastest of the game going for them. So, yeah, I listen. I could see conference championship definitely. Super Bowl, yeah, I could see it too in theory. Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. They're going to have to go through, the Chiefs, who never seem to lose in the playoffs, a Bills team that looks loaded this year, as well as some feisty teams, and obviously the rivals, the Ravens. The Texans are no pushover either. It's not going to be easy, but with Russell Wilson kind of in this revival stage of his career, if he continues to kind of play at this level, I definitely think they're capable of winning some games in that stage. And they've been kind of doubted at every point. Nobody thought that this team would be able to contend for a division title. Well, look, now they're 2 games up on the Ravens in the division, fighting for that AFC North crown. Nobody thought that Russell Wilson was going to be able to kind of return and play to this level of, what he used to be. And all of a sudden, Justin Fields is winning games. They still make the switch to Russell Wilson, and it has worked beautifully to this point. So, if people start to doubt that this team can make a run to a conference championship or a Super Bowl, I welcome it, because they've kind of exceeded the expectations at every turn so far this season. So I'm super amped up for what they kind of have going forward. They'll definitely have some good tests with, obviously a matchup against the Eagles coming up, defending, back-to-back champs in the Chiefs on Christmas. So there's definitely going to be these tests continuing going forward. They still got to lock up the division first and foremost, but I don't see any reason that if this team's hosting a home playoff game in the playoffs, that they can't potentially make a run and, have the stars kind of fall the right way where they are, sitting there as the AFC champs. I think that's within range of the ceiling for this team this year.
Yeah. Excuse me. No, definitely. I don't know if I have much more to add to that, but yeah, I'm with you on that. So it's just a matter of division, see if you, and then whatever else comes with that after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 3 out of their final five games here are going to be at home, and 3 of them, division rivalries. 3 of them also against teams that are going to be playoff teams. So it's not going to be easy. They're going to continue to be tested here, but I really like kind of where this team is sitting right now, and it's exciting. And let's flip things back to you here, with the Eagles, and just kind of talk about their game next week, and then we can kind of talk about their ceiling again here.
All right. Well, the Eagles host the Panthers on Sunday. As much as I want to say this is going to be I like don't sleep on Bryce Young or whatever. Like he's I don't know, he's living up to his potential now. I can't even say that. It's this is one of those games that you just how do I say? It's not a get right game because you haven't lost, but it's just one of those games you have to take care of business. If that makes sense. Uh, Play clean football. It's the one thing I will say. Panthers' run defense is absolutely atrocious. They allowed the Giants to run for 160 yards on them. The Chiefs also and then 200 yards last week against the Bucs. You know what to do. Just feed Saquon. That's as simple as it gets with that. And play sound defense like you have the whole season. Um, so that's I don't know if you have anything to add on that front because it's the
I
Panthers.
mean, yeah, it's the type of thing, man, where it's like, like you want to almost say like, oh, could it have the potential of a trap game? Like you're coming off a big game against the Ravens, like you've got the Steelers Battle of Pennsylvania the following week. Like, could it be a trap game? But like
maybe,
it just shouldn't be.
no.
It's like I want to say it shouldn't be, but then again, last year when the Cardinals were awful, and I thought there was no way the Steelers were going to lose to them, the Steelers still found a way to kind of drop that game improbably. So never say never, but I would definitely love for the Steelers to take care of the Browns and the Eagles to take care of the Panthers and have them go into a massive showdown 2 weeks from now in what's going to be a 4:25 game on Fox, a game of the week. So I'm hoping that's the case. And I guess before we kind of talk about that game a little bit, I mean, you kind of alluded to it before. I mean, are you full on the aspect of like this is a team that should make a run at least? Let me put it this way: if this team gets eliminated any earlier than the conference championship games, would you be disappointed at this stage?
Yeah, I would because I mean, it's them, the Lions, like the best two teams in the NFC. That's how I see it. I mean, you could argue the Packers, you could argue the Vikings, although I don't really trust the Vikings very much because Sam Darnold's fallen off a little bit, but the defense is still really good. I just think that the Eagles are a bit more talented than Packers and the Vikings. So I mean, the Lions are the Lions. Like they're just a powerhouse and they blow everyone out. So if you don't make it to the conference champion, then I'll be very disappointed.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I'm kind of with you, man, that like I think that's what everybody wants to see is just Eagles Lions in that conference championship game. I feel like it's lining up that way. And I mean, dude, I'll even say at this point, like with how good the Eagles defenses looked, coupled with the fact that like maybe I'm crazy for this, but I feel like I'm almost waiting for the other shoe to drop a little bit with the Lions. Like they are so banged up, but they've still found a way. Like they have so many players injured. I think it's something like they have 11 starters on out with injury right now, and they're still finding ways to just absolutely hammer teams that like I'm almost waiting for there to be like a stretch of like 2 games in 3 weeks type thing that they kind of lose and come back down to earth a little bit. I definitely still think they'll be there in the end at the NFC. Like they'll be a team that's you're going to have to go through, but like I kind of like the Eagles right up there in the NFC. Those two teams I think are kind of like 1 and 2. You kind of pick the order. I definitely think, kind of what you said. It's conference championship. Anything less than that's a disappointment. But I think this Eagles team is definitely capable of making it back to a Super Bowl again, just like 2 years ago.
Oh, I think so. Let me just say this about the Lions their remaining schedule is as follows. They host the Packers tomorrow. If they lose that and the Eagles win, I believe the Eagles would have the 1 seed. So that's huge. Then they face the Bills. So that's 2 massive games. Then they go to Chicago. They gave them some
on
fits
the road in Chicago. Hey, it was
yeah.
close on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
And then they go to the Niners and then close out with the Vikings. So that's not an easy schedule at all.
No. That's a really good litmus test for, especially with how banged up the Lions are, like how legitimate of contenders they are. Even not in the sense of like, let's just see if they're going to keep just like hammering teams going forward.
Yeah, no, that's
let's see if they get a loss or 2 in here and even just have a couple close games at this point. If they come back down to earth a little bit, kind of coupled with the Eagles still playing, good football going forward. I mean, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how things shift moving forward at this stage. And, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that, but, just talking about the Eagles moving forward here, we do have another Battle of Pennsylvania coming up. I mean, the last one we had was the Kenny Pickett-led Steelers against an Eagles team that would go on to, win the NFC in 2022. Now we get it, and it's going to be a little bit more evenly matched. I said it before. I really hope both of these teams take care of business against the Browns and the Panthers, respectively, this week, and we get both of these teams going in, riding high in what should be an exciting matchup in a Pennsylvania rivalry game.
Yeah, I mean, they hopefully, fingers crossed on that. But if I'm just looking forward to that game, I feel like it's going to be low scoring, just given how well these defenses, how well coached they are. And I'm not saying the offenses aren't going to put up points, but it's just, I feel like it's just going to be a really, really close game. Like, even if this was in Pittsburgh, like, I would still think the same. So
yeah,
I think it's going to be really tightly contested the entire way. So I think it's going to be a really good game.
I'm really interested too to see, like, if the Steelers game plan defensively, like, all right, we're going to really focus on trying to shut down the Eagles running attack.
Yeah.
How then transitions and watching in isolated matchups like AJ Brown and how the Steelers guard him. Like, we saw that Joey Porter Jr. trailed T. Higgins this past week. A lot of penalties. I don't want to dog on him yet because I think he's had a good season. Like, do they try to go that formula again where they use, kind of a by committee take care of AJ Brown and let Joey Porter Jr. shadow Devontae Smith? Like, those are the little nuances I'm interested. You said it. Saquon Barkley's been averaging like 140 yards per game in recent weeks. Like, do the Steelers really game plan to try to slow that down? Another aspect I want to point out too, and this is kind of, I feel like almost unrelated out of nowhere, but like just kind of came to mind here too. Like, this Steelers team, Alex Highsmith coming back, he's supposedly close on injury. I think he's a huge factor. Right now, the Steelers team is on pace to record the fewest sacks since they drafted TJ Watt. So that's an aspect I think that they need to kind of build back up. And getting Alex Highsmith back, I think, is going to be huge for that. So I don't know. I feel like I just kind of went in a lot of different directions there talking about the game. But I don't know. Your thoughts on anything there?
I mean, battle of if Highsmith is back, that's Mailata against, or TJ lines up on the, right on the left. He lines up on the left, right?
TJ
on the left. TJ, or they kind of like switch it up at times.
They switch off, but no, honestly, TJ Watt lines up more against the right tackle.
Oh, so that would be
that'd be Watt against Lane Johnson a lot of the time. And I mean, it'll be interesting too, because TJ Watt's been chipped or has had a tight end on him like every single snap this season.
Yeah, right.
It's going to be interesting how much the Eagles do that too.
Yeah, I feel like they don't. I feel like they trust their tackles enough to handle that, but we'll see. As long as that's definitely another fascinating. That's one of those under the radar kind of matchups that could determine the game.
I don't even know dude. If the Eagles just let Lane Johnson just go to work on TJ Watt, that's a popcorn matchup right there. I mean, that's in my opinion the best edge rusher in the NFL. In my opinion, honestly, the best defensive player in the NFL going one-on-one against the best tackle in the NFL. Like, that would be incredible to watch.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Who else I'm trying to think of matchup wise? I mean, two really good kickers, obviously.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, receivers. I mean, Pickens and Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and whoever wants to step up for wide receiver 3. Pratt Freiermuth. Dallas Goedert is probably going to be injured, but
I mean, I think you'd even say, like, Eagles defense too, relating to, I don't know what kind of the situation is with Darius Slay and his health at this point, but if it is the young corners, lining up against, George Pickens, one of the more talented receivers, they're going to see in their rookie season. So I feel like that's kind of another area that's fascinating as well. So like I said, it's a 4:25 game, man. It's on Fox. I'm sure we're going to get Burkhardt and Tom Brady. It's going to be the Fox game of the week. Popcorn matchup, man. Absolute popcorn matchup. I'm also curious. I don't know if you have anything to add on Steelers Eagles. Who's your favorite broadcast booth in the NFL right now?
Oh boy. Honestly, Joe Davis and Greg Olson, I would say.
That's a good one, dude. That's a good one. They're up there, man. You know, I've always been a big Joe Buck guy, even though I know some people like I feel like you either love him or you hate him. I've always been very pro Joe Buck. Dude, listening to Iron Eagle this week with Charles Davis, like I used to not be the bit like Iron Eagle. I was like, he's really talented, like love him in other sports, like football, something was just off for me, man. Like he's grown on me a lot. And like it's almost to the point that I like him and Charles Davis more than I like Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, which is also a little bit like crazy to say, but
I can see that.
Yeah. It's funny that the number, you said the number 2 team for Fox, and I said the number 2 team for CBS are both kind of up there, man. There's a lot of good broadcast teams. Joe Davis, dude. Joe Davis calling a baseball game like October playoffs, dude. Even though he's a Dodgers guy, and I'm with the Mets and everything, like I can't argue with talent, man. He's up there.
Oh, dude, all-time calls. So he's got some of the best out there for baseball. Jeez,
yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, you have any final thoughts here as we wrap things up?
Nah, I'm hoping our teams, get the job done, get the wins, and we face off and on a high note, like you said.
Yeah, man. It's an exciting time for both of these fan bases and for both of us talking about Steelers and Eagles. And, we'll see how our schedules kind of line up now that we're a little bit more sporadic with these episodes. But definitely more to come before the season's all said and done of Speaking Steagles. So until next time, peace out and goodbye.